What if I told you that your shyness is not the thing stopping you from being confident? What if the real problem is that you've been trying to become confident in a way that was never designed for someone like you? Because maybe you've spent years watching confident people walk into a room, speak without hesitation, make jokes, start conversations, and somehow look completely comfortable. And you look at them and think, I wish I could be like that. But here's the truth. You don't need to become louder. You don't need to become the most social person in the room. And you definitely don't need to destroy your personality and become someone you're not. You need to learn how to feel comfortable being yourself while doing the things that currently make you uncomfortable. That's a completely different game, because if you're naturally shy, you've probably experienced this. Someone asked you a question, and suddenly your brain goes completely blank. You had something to say 5 seconds ago. Now, nothing. Just silence. You think, why can't I think of anything? Then the conversation ends, and 5 minutes later, while you're alone, your brain suddenly gives you the perfect answer. Oh, I should have said Taro. And now you're replaying the conversation in your head like it's a movie you directed and somehow still got the worst possible ending. You think about what you said, how you sounded, where you looked, whether they thought you were awkward, whether they noticed you were nervous. And then you make a quiet promise to yourself. Next time I'll be more confident, but next time comes... and the same thing happens. So let's change the way you think about confidence, because confidence is not the absence of shyness. Confidence is the ability to act even when shyness is present. Read that again mentally. You can be shy and still be confident. You can feel nervous and still speak. You can have butterflies in your stomach and still introduce yourself. You can be quiet and still have presence. And once you understand that, something incredibly important changes. You stop fighting yourself. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a swimming pool. You're nervous about jumping in. You could spend 20 minutes standing there telling yourself, I shouldn't be scared. Confident people aren't scared. Come on, don't be weak. Or does that make you less afraid? Usually not. It makes you more aware of the fear. But imagine instead you say, yeah, I'm nervous. And I'm jumping anyway. Now you've changed the relationship. You're no longer waiting for fear to disappear before you act. You're teaching yourself that fear doesn't get to make the decision. And this is the first shift you need to make. Stop making confidence a feeling you have to achieve before you take action. Make confidence a behavior you practice. Because here's the strange thing about confidence. You don't think your way into it. You act your way into it. Think about someone learning to ride a bicycle. They don't sit on the couch for 6 months studying balance and then magically become a cyclist. They get on the bike, they wobble, they fall, they try again. Eventually, their body learns something their brain couldn't fully explain. Confidence works the same way. Your brain needs evidence. It needs proof that says, I can handle this. And you create that proof through small actions. So if you're shy, don't start by walking into a crowded room and trying to become the most charismatic person there. That's like trying to run a marathon because you want to get better at walking. Start ridiculously small. Say hello to the cashier. Ask someone a simple question. Make eye contact for 1 extra second. Speak up once during a meeting. Tell someone what you actually think instead of automatically saying, whatever you want. These moments seem tiny, but your brain is watching. Every time you act despite discomfort, you're making a deposit into your confidence account. And eventually something beautiful happens. The thing that used to require courage becomes normal. But there's another reason shy people struggle that nobody talks about enough. You're probably spending too much attention on yourself. Think about what happens when you're nervous in a conversation. Your attention goes inward. How do I look? Do I sound weird? What should I say next? Was that stupid? Are they judging me? Your brain is basically running a live commentary about yourself while you're supposed to be listening to another human being. No wonder you're exhausted. You can't connect with someone while constantly monitoring yourself. So here's your second shift. Move your attention from yourself to the other person. This sounds incredibly simple, but it can transform conversations. Instead of asking, how am I performing? Ask, what can I discover about this person? Instead of thinking, what should I say next? Listen for something interesting in what they just said. Instead of trying to impress them, become curious about them, because curiosity is one of the greatest antidotes to shyness. Imagine you're talking to someone at a party. They say, I've been working in marketing for 3 years. A shy version of you might think, oh no, what do I say? A curious version of you thinks, 3 years? Why marketing? What do they actually enjoy about it? And suddenly you have a question. What's the best part of working in marketing? They answer. Then you listen. Maybe they mention something about traveling. Now you ask about that, the conversation starts moving. You didn't need an amazing personality. You didn't tin clever stories. You simply paid attention. And this is where many people get confidence completely wrong. They think confident people are constantly talking. They're not. Confident people are often comfortable listening, because they don't feel the need to prove that they're interesting every 5 seconds. They can let silence exist. They can ask questions, they can pause, they can think, and that leads to something else you need to practice: silence. If you're naturally shy, you might be terrified of silence. Someone finishes speaking and your brain screams, "Also, I saw anything." So you say something unnecessary just to fill the space. And then you leave the conversation thinking, Why did I say that? Here's the secret. A pause is not failure. A pause is space. Confident speakers use pauses because they aren't afraid of taking a moment to think. So the next time someone asks you a question, don't rush. Take one breath. Think, then answer. That tiny pause can change the way you sound. You don't become more confident by speaking faster. Sometimes you become more confident by becoming comfortable with going slower. And this brings us to the third shift. Stop trying to eliminate awkward moments. Learn to recover from them. Because here's something nobody tells you. Confident people still have awkward moments. They say the wrong thing. They forget names. They stumble over words. They tell jokes that don't land. They walk into doors. Yes, even confident people lose arguments with automatic doors. The difference is what happens afterward. An insecure person thinks, that was terrible. Everyone noticed. I ruined everything. A confident person thinks, well, that was awkward, and moves on. That's it. They don't turn one awkward moment into a 5-year identity. You need to stop treating every mistake as evidence about who you are. If you stumble while speaking, keep going. If you forget someone's name, ask again. If you make a joke and nobody laughs, smile. If you say something that comes out wrong, correct yourself. You don't need a perfect conversation. You need the ability to recover. That's real confidence. Think about a professional athlete. Do you think confidence means they never miss? Of course not. Confidence means missing doesn't destroy them. They trust themselves to continue. You need the same relationship with yourself. And there's another powerful exercise you can start today. Every night, write down one moment where you were brave. Not impressive, brave. Maybe you asked a question. Maybe you started a conversation. Maybe you spoke up even though your voice shook. Maybe you told someone what you really thought. Maybe you simply stayed in a social situation instead of escaping because you felt uncomfortable. Write it down. Why? Because shy people often remember their failures in high definition and their victories in low resolution. You remember the awkward sentence from Tuesday, but you forget the conversation where someone smiled because of something you said. You remember the moment you felt nervous, but you forget that you still did it. Your brain needs to see the complete picture. And that brings us to one of the biggest confidence killers of all, comparison. You compare your beginning to someone else's 10th year. You see someone who speaks effortlessly and think, I'll never be like that. But you don't know their story. You don't know how many awkward conversations they had. You don't know how many times they embarrassed themselves. You don't know how long they practiced. You're looking at the finished building and comparing it to your empty construction site. Of course, it feels unfair. So stop asking, why can't I be as confident as them? Ask a better question. Am I more confident than I was 6 months ago? That's the comparison that matters. Maybe 6 months ago, you couldn't introduce yourself. Now you can. Maybe you couldn't speak in meetings. Now you say one sentence. Maybe you avoided eye contact. Now you can hold it naturally. That's progress. And progress is how confidence is built, not through one magical transformation. Through hundreds of tiny moments where you prove to yourself, I can do this. But there's one final idea I want you to remember, because this might be the most important one. You don't have to stop being shy. You have to stop being ashamed of being shy. There is nothing wrong with being naturally quiet. There is nothing wrong with needing time to warm up. There is nothing wrong with preferring meaningful conversations over small talk. There is nothing wrong with being the person who listens more than they speak. Your personality isn't a problem that needs to be repaired. Your fear of expressing that personality is what you need to work on. Because imagine what happens when you stop trying to become the loudest person in the room. You become present. You stop performing. You start listening. You start speaking when you actually have something to say. And strangely enough, people begin to notice you more. Not because you became louder, because you became more comfortable. That's what presence is. It's not volume. It's not having the perfect words. It's not dominating every conversation. It's being fully there. And you can practice this today. The next time you enter a room, don't tell yourself, oh, I need to be confident. Or tell yourself, I'm going to be curious. The next time you feel nervous speaking, don't say, I need to stop being nervous. Say, I can be nervous and still speak. The next time you have an awkward moment, don't say, everyone thinks I'm weird. Say, that happened. I'm still here. And the next time you catch yourself comparing your personality to someone else's, remember this, you don't need their confidence, you need your own. Because maybe you've spent years believing that being shy means something is missing inside you. Maybe you thought confidence belonged to extroverts. Maybe you thought confident people were simply born that way. But now you know better. Confidence isn't a personality type. It's a relationship with yourself. It's the relationship that says, I trust myself to handle what happens next. And you build that relationship one uncomfortable action at a time. So tomorrow, don't try to become a completely different person. Just do one thing your shy self normally avoids. Ask the question. Say hello, speak up, hold the eye contact, share the opinion, take the small risk, then do it again the next day. Because one day, you're going to walk into a room and realize something. The room didn't change. The people didn't change. You didn't suddenly become the loudest person there. You simply stopped believing that you needed permission to take up space. And that is the moment you realize you were never supposed to become someone else. You were supposed to become more comfortable being you. Your shyness may always be a small part of your personality.
That's okay, let it be there.
Just don't let it drive the car. You are allowed to be quiet and confident. You are allowed to be nervous and courageous. You are allowed to pause, think, speak slowly, make mistakes, laugh at yourself and try again. And every time you do, you're teaching your brain a new truth. I don't need to feel confident to act confident. I can act first. And confidence will catch up